Now, we're used to having best before dates on our food, but what if one were slapped on the fridge that holds it? A new measure imposed by the French government seeks to do something along those lines. The new law applies to products like consumer electronics or household appliances. It's intended to address the problem of planned obsolescence, in which products are built to fail after a certain amount of time. The law will force manufacturers to tell customers how long to expect the product to last. Manufacturers would also have to inform consumers via vendors how long spare parts would be available. Aubrey LeBlanc is president of the Consumers Council of Canada. So let's start with what you think of the concept. And essentially what the government is saying to manufacturers is, let's have a kind of a new understanding, a promise with the buyers that'll tell them this fridge will last 10 years, and then it actually has to be true.
Well, at that level, it's a fabulous idea. The idea of telling the truth or communicating. Most of the criticisms in the consumer space about the marketplace, or many of them, relate to information, disclosure, a match between what you thought was going to happen and what did happen. So I think in that context, this makes a lot of sense.
We have a kind of a suspicion that there's planned obsolescence in products. Is that true in your view? I mean, do businesses actually say we want this thing to break down because we need people to buy another one at some point?
Yes, but we don't really take a position on the obsolescence question in and of itself, because I think everybody knows there's a life cycle to just about everything, and some even market to that. Roof products are 15-year, 25-year tiles, that kind of thing. So there's a sense of that. People automotively, think of a certain life cycle of a car, and then they want to move on, or at a certain point it's going to start needing repair or maintenance or that kinds of thing. It isn't so much the obsolescence, it's the truth between... It's knowing what was sold and what you got. That's more the issue. So on that front,
I think people do like, if they're spending X amount on a roof, the idea that it's guaranteed for 10 years, or at least that's the expectation of how long a roof lasts. Do you think people would be surprised by the numbers? That if they bought a fridge, would we be shocked if the manufacturer had to say, we actually expect this to last 7 years, or whatever the number is?
I think it would depend on what the number was.
Right,
I think the idea that something's going to fail someday, or that it's going to need maintenance, would at least engage the dialogue. I think there would be surprises, there would be some ahas, there would be some clear agreement in the marketplace, depending on the product or the term. But at least it would engage an informed discussion as part of the consumer marketplace.
We already know. I mean, I would imagine that if I'm going to pick on the fridge manufacturers, that they already know if they sell, they sell a number of these, they would know how long they last, when they first need repair. They've got all kinds of data. Why don't they share it already? Why don't we know that if a certain fridge, on average, has lasted with consumers X number of years? It seems like it would be a selling feature.
Yes and no. I think everything is built in a way that will translate into a life cycle. I'm not sure the marketplace absolutely wants something that lasts forever.
That's the problem.
Because there will be a price consequence to that. Right. So I think what people want to know is to know what's going to happen.
And of course, along with the price consequence, you will have to pay more for quality, I guess, is the point. And that point was made.
Yes.
We also change our tastes. So do we want things to last too long if we want to change up the style of things as we go?
Society says no. Aging population says yes. And so I think it depends on the stratification of the demographics, the product that you're talking about, and I think the sense of value. So it's about knowledge, and it's about the value proposition. If you're not paying a lot, you might not expect quite so much. If you're paying quite a bit more, you're expecting more. And it's all about open dialogue at the moment of purchase. We
do have, obviously, consumer protections in this country. Are they strong enough? Do they do what they need to do so people do have an awareness of what we're buying and at what price?
One of our colleague organizations, Union des Consommateurs in Quebec, did a research piece for the federal government in 2012, and it suggests that the general panoply of Canadian and provincial statutes and mechanisms suggest that we do have a lot of coverage and a lot of protection, but they're not consistent. And there are problems with lots of elements of it. So, for example, redress. There are lots of requirements for exposing information about a product or communicating, but when one wants to do something about it or activate it, it may not be an enforced statute. The amount of money may not make it economically worthwhile. You may be talking, even on auto recalls, if you think about it, usually what goes wrong is like a $2 item, right? And so the idea of the economics of making it right is often the problem.
So in this case, when the French government says within the first 2 years, if your product needs any kind of replacement part, forget making people buy an extended warranty, you are on the hook. Is that a good thing to do? Because it'll be built into the price of these things, I'm sure.
It will eventually, although I think it places the onus on government then to make sure that if the balloon is pushed here, that there isn't some other consequence showing up some other way. If that's the goal. If that's the goal, that this isn't about prices. One is assuming fixed pricing, that if you make that a mandatory requirement, that you don't get this glutting of price point.
In this day and age, when we have so much information available, do consumers really have any excuse for not actually doing homework and research and understanding what it is that they're buying? Are we still as preyed upon as we might have been 20, 30 years ago?
I think we're played upon by volume, if nothing else. I mean, the choices that one makes on a daily basis, and being in a consumption society, it's very difficult to keep up with everything. So while there may be absolute increases in information about everything, the ability to process that, to make trade-offs, to research, to access, and to make informed decisions is a full-time job. So being a consumer is a full-time job, and we all have to live our lives.
Yep, and we've all had that moment of paralysis in the drugstore aisle, looking at 52 types of toothpaste and wondering what's happening to the world.
It's the same in the medical system. It's the same everywhere in life. So in consumerism, it's the same.
Thanks, Aubrey.
My pleasure.
Aubrey LeBlanc, President of the Consumer Council of Canada.